Hello students, and welcome to the final video of section 3.1. In this video, we're going to be looking at graphs and tables when we're using the product rule. So stay with it. This is going to be the last video, and I hope you enjoy. So here we have two graphs. We've got the graph of f of x and g of x, and we also have two functions. We have p of x and r of x, and those are going to be super important as we start to go through some of these problems. All right, so take a second to look at what those are doing and how we're going to use those. But so we're looking here first at g prime of -4 equals 2. What is the value of p prime of -4? So go back up and you want to find p prime of x. All right, so p of x, again, that's f of x times g of x. So we want to find that derivative using the product rule. So that's going to be f prime of x times g of x plus f of x times g prime of x. All right, so now I've got enough information where I can find p prime of -4. So p prime of -4, that's where I want to find f prime of -4 times g of -4 plus f of -4 times g prime of -4. And this is where you might be realizing, oh man, this is actually super helpful because now I have a bunch of little pieces that are really easy to find. So f prime of -4, all I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the graph of f. And here's -4 right there. And I need to get the slope. And since it's linear, the slope is going to remain constant. And that slope is going to be -1. And then g of -4. So now I'm going to look at this graph here. So g of -4, I'm looking at -4. And I just want the value at that point. So that's going to be times 6 over here. Now I want plus f of -4. So f of -4, now I want the y value of f. So I'm looking at that graph over there. So the y value comes out to be -1, which is different than the first one because that was the slope. Just so happens that they were the same value. And then g prime of -4, well, that's given, so we don't have to do extra work. So that's going to be 2. All right, so now I just need to multiply these out. So I get -6 minus 2. So p prime of -4 comes out to be -8. So that's how you do these graphical and tabular questions. Let's jump over to our second one where we want to find, well, we know f prime of -2 is 20. We want to find g prime of -2. So let's look at what we're given. Here we are given r of x is x squared times g of x. So we want to take that derivative. We'll make some substitutions. So real quick, here is r prime of x, and that's going to be 2x times g of x because it's the derivative of the first, which is 2x times g of x, plus the first, so x squared, times the derivative of the second, so times g prime of x. All right, so let's see what we want to do. It might be useful to substitute in this -2. So r prime of -2 right here, so that's going to be 2 times -2, g of -2 plus -2 squared times g prime of -2. All right. And so then all I have to do is work with this. So I already know it's given that r prime of -2 is 20. So I'm going to replace 20 right there. I'm going to get -4, and g of -2, this is where I go back up to my graph. So g of -2 is going to be -3. All right. So -4, g of -2 is -3. So I'm going to multiply those. All right. And then plus -2 squared is 4, and I want to find g prime of -2. That's what I actually want to find. I can't get that from the function because it is parabolic right there. So I won't be able to grab the the value just by like an estimation won't be good enough. So I want to find that. Like, what is that? And then I just need to solve for it here because there's just one unknown. So I'll get this and I'll solve this like a normal equation. So 20 equals 12 plus 4 times g prime of negative 2. All right, so subtract 12. So 8 equals 4 times g prime of negative 2. So now divide by 4, and I'm going to get 2 equals g prime of negative 2. And that is going to be our value for g prime of negative 2. We now know, because we were given some information about r prime, that g prime of negative 2 is going to come out to be 2. So now let's go and use some of the results that we've got here. So I want to find the equation of the line tangent to the graph of p of x when x equals negative 4. All right, so looking at our first problem that we did, we found p prime of negative 4. So our slope of the tangent line, so p prime of negative 4, you see it right above it, p prime of negative 4 came out to be negative 8. So now I want to find our point of tangency. So I want to find p of negative 4. And so since we only had like f times g, so that's going to be f of negative 4 times g of negative 4. And if you go up and you grab those from the graph, you'll get negative 1 times 6, which is negative 6. So my point of tangency is negative 4 comma negative 6. All right, so now what you want to do with that is you want to write your equation of the tangent line. All right, so that's going to be y plus 6 equals our slope, so negative 8 times x plus 4. And that's going to be our equation of the tangent line for p of x at x equal to negative 4. Now I want to do a similar thing over here for r of x. Find the equation of the tangent line to the graph when x equals negative 2. So our slope of the tangent line, we want to find r prime of negative 2, which we were given before. So r prime of negative 2 comes out to be 20. And our point of tangency, so I want to find r of negative 2. All right, so that's going to be negative 2 squared times g of negative 2. So that's going to be 4, and then g of negative 2, if you grab that from the graph, so g of negative 2 is going to be negative 3. I multiply those together, I get negative 12. And so my point of tangency would be negative 2 comma negative 12. And if I write the equation here, I'll get y plus 12 equals our slope, so 20 times x plus 2. And that's going to be our equation of the tangent line for r of x at x equals negative 2. Now I want to look at and do some work using tables. So go ahead, you're going to want to examine this table a little bit, but we want to estimate the value of f prime at 3.5. So we want to estimate the slope. You want to think about the average rate of change. So I'm thinking in my head, all right, I want to find, so if I want to estimate this f prime at 3.5, that's going to be approximately, it's going to be really close to f of 4, so the points around it, minus f of 3 over 4 minus 3, because it's like somewhere in the middle between those. All right, so f of 4 is 1, and f of 3 is negative 2. So 1 plus 2 over 1, and this comes out to be 3. So now I want to find q of x. We want to find q prime of 4. So first I need to take the derivative. All right, so let's see. What is q prime of x? So that's going to be 2f prime of x minus 4g prime of x. Okay, and I want to find q prime of 4. So q prime of 4, that's going to be 2 times f prime of 4 minus 4g prime of 4. All right, so let's see what we can do. So I'm going to get 2 times f prime of 4, so that's going to be 2 right there. Minus 4 times g prime of 4, so that's going to be negative 3. So I get 4 plus 12, which is 16 right there. So again, I'm trying to color code it as much as possible. I'm just grabbing any of these values that you see here. I'm just grabbing them from that table up there above. Now in this problem, we want to go and we're going to end up using the product rule. So let me see. Let's find p prime of x first. So that's going to be negative 2. That's a constant times, and I'll use the product rule in f and g. So f prime of x times g of x plus f of x times g prime of x. So that's the product rule right there. And now I want to find p prime of 3. So it's going to be negative 2 f prime of 3 g of 3 plus f of 3 times g prime of 3. So that equals negative 2. So f prime of 3. Let's see what we can do with that. So f prime of 3, I just need to grab that from my table. So f prime of 3, that's going to be negative 4. So that's negative 4 times g of 3. Grab that from my table. That's going to be negative 3. So times negative 3. Plus f of 3 from my table, that is negative 2. And then g prime of 3 from my table, that's going to be right over there. So g prime of 3 is positive 2. Okay, so I want to multiply everything out, just solve for this. So negative 2, I get positive 12 minus 4. So 12 minus 4 is 8. 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. All right, so our final answer here is going to be p prime of 3 comes out to be negative 16. And now we've got one more question remaining. Actually, no, I take that back. We have 2 more questions remaining. I'm sorry. So we want to find the equation of the line tangent to the graph of v of x equal to x cubed times f of x when x equals negative 1. So equation of the line tangent. So we want a tangent line. And so we want the derivative. So let's find the derivative real quick. So v prime of x is going to be 3x squared times f of x plus x cubed times f prime of x. All right, now let's find our point of tangency, because we're going to need that for our equation. So I just want v of negative 1, and that's going to be negative 1 cubed times f of negative 1. So that's going to be negative 1 times f of negative 1. Sorry, I wrote 3 right there. Fixed. All right, so f of negative 1, I come up here. F of negative 1 comes out to be 2. All right, so that's going to be negative 1 times 2, which is negative 2. So my point of tangency would be negative 1 comma negative 2. Now I want to find the slope of the tangent line. All right, so that's why I took that derivative. So I want to find v prime of negative 1. So that's going to be 3 times negative 1 squared times f of negative 1 plus negative 1 cubed times f prime of negative 1. All right, let's get everything that we need here. So that's negative 1 squared. That's 3 times f of negative 1, which is 2, minus, because negative 1 cubed is negative, and then times f prime of negative 1. Get that from up here. So f prime of negative 1, that's going to be 1. So minus 1. So I get 6 minus 1, which is 5. And now I can write the slope of my tangent line. Or sorry, write the equation of my tangent line. So that's going to be y plus 2 equals 5 times x plus 1. And that's going to be the equation of the slope of my tangent line here. And we've got one question remaining, and this one's a bit of a beast of a problem, but it's just the product rule. So split it up into the first function and our second function. So we want to find k prime of x first. And so the derivative of the first, so that's going to be 2f prime of x. The 3 is a constant, so this is going to be the derivative times 3 minus g of x. Plus the first, so 2f of x plus 3, times the derivative of the second, so times negative g prime of x. Make sure you hold on to that negative sign there. All right, and we want to find what is k prime of 3, so let's substitute 3 in and then just do all the small problems after. So 2f prime of 3, 3 minus g of 3 plus 2f of 3 plus 3, and then negative g prime of 3. Okay, so let's go up here and see what we can get. So I get 2 times f prime of 3, and you get that from your table, and you get negative 4. And then you get 3 minus g of 3, and you get that from your table, and you get negative 3, plus 2 times f of 3. Oops, and need a parentheses there. So f of 3, you get that from your table. You get negative 2 plus 3. And then you get times negative g prime of 3, and g prime of 3 is 2 from your table. And now we just got a bunch of numbers that we need to work with. All right, so 2 times negative 4, that's negative 8. 3 plus 3, that's 6. All right, and then plus negative 4 plus 3, so that's negative 1 and negative 2. And if we take that, I get negative 48 plus 2, which comes out to be negative 46. And that right there is going to conclude section 2.1 on the product rule. I know it can be a lot sometimes, but you need to be really comfortable with these different versions that you can see here. So make sure you do practice this and you look at very closely all of the homework problems that you're going to be given coming up. If you do need any help with any parts of this lesson, please make sure you reach out to me. I'm Mr. Hernandez, and this was Mr. Hernandez Teaches.